We're going to talk about Dark Souls today. Cue the intro. Let's talk about Dark Souls. They just released the remastered a few months ago. And I played it. And I want to talk about this game. But to talk about this game, we have to talk about a lot of game design because this game is a complex game. It's a polarizing game. And the interesting thing about Dark Souls is that a lot of people talk about it. But today I'm going to talk about it from a point of view that I don't see a lot of other videos talking about, which I'm like, this is a really interesting thing what this game actually tries to do. And to talk about that, I'm also going to have to talk about another thing, which is this book here, The Art of Failure. We're also going to talk about The Art of Failure, an essay on the pain of playing video games by Jesper Jew. Now, the reason I want to talk about The Art of Failure, and this basically is also an essay that you can pretty much just apply to this game, because you think about it, you play this game and you're dying all the time. It's like, you died, 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 you died. Hey, I got a package for you. Really? What was it? You died. Now here's some other thing, just a side thing I want to talk about. What is this? There's supposed to be things here, like manuals and lore and stuff and anyway, Dark Souls. So you're always dying, you're dying, you're dying, you're dying. So here's the interesting question that any sane person would actually ask. And that's interesting because it's like, why do people play Dark Souls? It took me 2 years to beat this. I got it on the 360, I managed to go up to the Minotaur. There was 100 million years of just work as I kept dying all the way to the the community about this game has something that they call Get Good, which is spelled J-I-T space G-U-D. Get Good. Holy shit. Oh my god, it took me 2 years. And then I paused and played other games and then came back to it and I kept doing this for 2 years until I finally beat it. But why? Why is such a painful experience pleasurable? The interesting thing about these games that just drive us very passionate about them actually propose a paradox. So the paradox, as it highlights, has 3 points. So the first one is, it's you generally, number one, you generally avoid failure. And that's true. You're generally avoiding failure. It's hey, do you want to get your ass kicked today? You want to go down the street with the ice cream truck? Excuse me, sir, can I have any ice cream? And the guy's like, no. And you get disappointed. You talk for a therapist. You're like, what happened, little Timmy? And you're like, no ice cream for me. Anyway, number 2 is we experience failure when playing games. We experience failure when playing games. In other words, we avoid failure, but we're experiencing failure in playing games. You're getting your ass kicked. So if we're avoiding failure, and yet we play games in which failure is a constant thing, it leads to the 3rd point, which is we seek out games, although we will experience something that we normally avoid. And that is pretty much the entire subject matter of this book. They're like, you don't want pain. You play video games that cause you pain. Because here's the thing. As a matter of fact, this type of game is what the games that people were actually playing all the way to 2006, when a cataclysmic event occurred in the game design industry, which historians call it, and by historians as I refer it with friends and in this video, the Casual Revolution of 2006. In 2006, a casual revolution in game design occurred. It's when game designers figure out, he's a game designer from the 90s, he's like, wow, instead of making games difficult, we could actually just make them easy, but make people feel as it was difficult. Dun, dun, dun. But the interesting thing about Dark Souls is that, okay, if you actually look at games like Ghosts and Goblins, games from the 90s, right? Before the casual revolution of 2006, it's you had games good example game, like Ghosts and Goblins, right? Like Contra. Those games, it's if you draw a line, bloop, of the type of games that require just an immense amount of skill, right? Like Mega Man, like Castlevania, like Mega Man X, like Street Fighter, like Fatal Fury, like King of Fighters, like those kinds of games, right? Just like you just gotta be really at them. It's like you gotta be really good at it. It's just like a billion hours, like with the controllers, then you're playing the joystick, and like it's like your hands become like neurosurgeon fast, like that kind of. That's what you gotta do, man. And Dark Souls is based, but like then it was like going on like that, and then the 2006 Casual Revolution bifurcated game design and went to another trajectory, which is the kind of trajectory of like, you know, this various gamification aspects about you get a prize. It's like, it's an evolution of the concept itself. And you actually got a really, like, there's a reason games are so global. It's also because of that. But anyway, Dark Souls, the interesting thing about Dark Souls is like, it's like you had the bifurcation, right? But Dark Souls, it's like, okay, I'm not going to go like everybody else did. I'm actually going to keep going a previous path. It is just like the games of the 90s back in the day. But it's a modern take on it. That's the absolutely brilliant thing about this game. It's a modern take on that design philosophy, which still is alive and kicking in Japan. You know, people are like, Japan hasn't evolved. The latest game design fitted it. Like, no, it has kept iterating quite a bit, but it just followed its own trajectory, right? But there's like, one day we'll talk about the influence of Japan in itself in Game Design Wit, and it's a phenomenal influence. Holy shit. You could just have like, I majored in Japanese game design. Like, you could just say that, because that's how complex it is. Anyway, Dark Souls from Software, a Japanese studio. The guy's like, oh, let's make a game that was like before the Casual Revolution 2006. But the interesting thing about Dark Souls and why it's so brilliant, and why it's like, I consider it to be a modern masterpiece, and I don't say that about every game, is that it rethinks an enormous amount of concepts about, okay, let's, using this design philosophy of just immense skill, my cat was like, I want to get inside the door, and the cat might show up and frame any moment. Anyway, it talks about that medium in itself. It's like, okay, if you're constantly dying, what does that actually mean? And it's like in the story, the fact that you're constantly dying, your ghost, your undead thing, that corpse that just keeps on dying is immortal. Like, you just die, you just come back again. Like, you're stuck there forever. There's no escape. Then you just go insane. And the interesting thing about the game's plot, that you go insane, is also how the player feels. Right? You get frustrated. And that is the point that it's trying to make. People are like, oh, it's just notoriously difficult. That's the point. In every single aspect, it tries to be as difficult as it can be in every area of facet that it could actually control. The sound design makes you feel like shit, right? The lore makes you feel like shit about the sound design, right? There's like moments you're just walking around, there's like an explosion of sound, and you get scared. And there's like metal clickety-click things as you're like, you don't know what the hell's going on. And there are moments in which you can't see it well ahead of you, and there's like sounds that echoes. It's like very well designed with regards to that. And then there's like, the cat is moving the camera. Are we okay to keep going? Okay. No, and so it's just like, you're just constantly getting your ass kicked in this game, and the lore, and not just the lore, the plot is trying to constantly making you get upset. Every character just listen to every character. Everybody is just maniacally laughing. Right, just maniacally laughing every time you stop talking with them. You're just like, ha 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 ha. It's just like, just laughing. But at the same time, it is a game. And so what the interesting thing about the book that The Art of Failure also talks about is, because it is a game, is precisely why it breaks that paradox. Why that we avoid pain, but we seek pain in games, and yet what we're doing is something that doesn't make sense from that, simple paradigm. And the reason is that inside a game, there's all this, behavioral research that highlights that if you feel better about achieving something, or why you feel better about achieving something, it's very simple, because it's meaningful to you. And the reason why it's meaningful to you as a player is because the game is just presenting itself as a challenge. It's saying, I am a game, but I'm hard as shit. I am fair. And so one of the other interesting things about the actual element about art of failure is like when you're failing a game, you have to understand the concept of failure in itself. And there is a thing in psychology called attribution theory, right? And the attribution theory just highlights like, why do we attribute failure? And you can actually have an attribution. You can say basically it's a person, entity, or circumstances. So person, anyway. So the story, the plot, and then you get like all of these elements. And I haven't even talked about the combat system. Now, I feel like I could just talk about the combat system in an entire episode because that's the bulk of what you do in the actual game. And it is set up to be difficult and challenging. It's like, you know, think of the idea of Castlevania where jumping head, it's actually on momentum. Like you're like, bloop, like there's a little strategy to it. But then you just get this concept and they apply it everywhere. Swinging your sword has a concept to it. The act of just swinging. Like, how complex can be the act of swinging a sword? It's actually quite complex. Like, I'm just going to get the sword, I'm just going to, like, you play games like System Shock, you play games like Deus Ex, you play games like Prey. If you're trying to, like, swing a sword and like, it's very easy, you just press a button. And nothing ever bad happens by swinging your sword in those games. No, but in Dark Souls, you can by swinging your sword when you're like, what the hell? And that's like the combat, and it's like, every weapon has different animations. And also every weapon and every item in the game has lore, right? And it just keeps constructing this mechanism of like non-stop. It's like there's this giant universe and it's complex.
You only have 2 more minutes
of footage. All right, guys, we're gonna have 2 more minutes of footage. Anyway, this is Game Design Wit. Like and subscribe. And anyway, like you get the point. The point is, it's like it feels an achievement. So I'm just gonna finalize with this thing. Cat is vomiting in the bathroom. Oh, we can talk more. All right, so we got. Oh, now we have 2 minutes.
Não, na verdade tem mais uns 5 minutos, na verdade. Tá bom, tem uns 10 minutos.
She's like, oh, actually, we just have 2 minutes of. She told me there's only 2 minutes of footage, but there's actually 10, 20 minutes of footage.
10 minutes.
All right, the cat vomited. All right, so let's do the take again. So the interesting thing about Jesper Drew and the Art of Failure is that in this book, the interesting thing about it is that there's a lot of interesting things about it. You should read more books. You're like, stop watching YouTube. I feel like I can keep talking about Dark Souls. So I'm going to make another video, but it's going to be a choose your own adventure games. All right, so instead of, like, you guys decide in the comments, be like, do you want me to talk about Japanese game design influence in this game, the combat system, or the plot? You guys like and subscribe. In the meantime, I'm going to pretend my cat did not vomit.